going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. This morning we begin our discussions with candidates for office and representatives of various issues that will be on the November 3rd ballot. In the second half of the program, we will have a special report prepared by Jeff Hirsh on the hotly contested Township Trustee race in Union Township, Claremont County. But we begin this morning with a discussion of the operating levy renewal proposal for the Cincinnati Public Schools, the region's largest school district. The proposed operating levy is a property tax renewal of a levy that was first adopted by voters in 1980 and renewed every 5 years since then. The levy would generate $65 million annually for the school system, but because it is a renewal, it is not an increase over the current taxes. That amount is about 14% of the system's $467 million budget. The existing levy does not expire until December the 31st, 2010, but the district has decided to seek renewal early, leaving open the option of coming back to the voters in elections next year. If this passes, no funds would be generated until January the 1st, 2011. To discuss the Cincinnati levy proposal, I am joined this morning by Jan Leslie, who is the coordinator and director of the levy renewal campaign, and Marvin Koenig, the chair of CASE, Cincinnatians active to support education. Why can't I get that? And the honorary chair of the campaign. Also, Marvin was the principal of Walnut Hills High School for 15 years before he retired a couple of years ago. Welcome to Newsmakers. Marvin, welcome. Jan, welcome back. Now, in a year where the economic situation is as dire as it is, and there's a number of levies on the ballot this year that are problematic in terms of, for the voters, I think of the Family Service and Treatment Program, which those programs have always run under the Drake label, this time have to explain themselves differently. And also, for the first time in history, we have a public library levy. Why did the schools decide to go forward with this year, a bit ahead of when you absolutely have to? What went into that decision?
Well, I think it really is a fiscal decision. Districts by law can do this 18 months ahead of when it expires. And the district, like any business, has to plan budgets. So school budgets begin planning in December of '09. For the next school year.
So right after this year's?
Absolutely. So if this money is not secured, the schools and the district must begin to plan for the decrease. And that becomes problematic because you must, while it can go back on the ballot, you may be preparing two budgets, one without significant reductions.
Marvin, you've been a principal, you've been in that situation with budgeting. If something like this is up in the air, even though it could pass sometime next year as well, what does that do in your process of, if it's not secured, what does that do in the budgeting process?
It almost makes the budgeting process impossible if you don't know in December, as you meet collaborative with your parent groups and your teacher groups, what kind of money you're going to have allocated to you for planning, how many courses, how many classrooms, and so forth. So it's really a disastrous situation if you don't know. So even though it may sound as if it were an early submission, it's not early in the practical stance of the school.
And just before we got started, the comment was made that the organization, CASE, which is Cincinnati is active to support education, I am going to get that, was founded when this particular levy was passed the first time, back in 1980. So there's something really that matches those two things, which is kind of interesting because CASE has been so important in everything with the schools since then. The other thing that some people have raised here is that last year in the March 2008 election cycle, the schools had a tax levy increase on the ballot. So let's make clear here about, again, I have heard people say, well, why are they coming back with another levy? What's the difference between these two?
This one is just a renewal. I mean, it's a renewal. It has been renewed 5 times. It's a renewal of current operating funds that are within the district, $65 million. And it doesn't raise taxes. Unfortunately, in the state of Ohio, school systems still, because of House Bill 920, the millages roll back, and to get inflationary increases or increases to do anything new, school districts have to come back on the ballot.
Okay, you just got into some technical
I'm sorry.
stuff. No, but I just want to make sure people understand.
Right.
920, millage has to be rolled back. What does that mean?
That means that whatever the amount of money that issue first was passed for,
So
like
in this particular case, $65 million.
Is the amount of money it collects every year. You basically don't get inflationary increases to your funding stream like all the other entities do, the city and other.
Okay, this is for schools only.
Schools
Schools
only.
only.
And
Right.
it's why you see about 3/4 of the districts in the state of Ohio on the ballot every 3 to 4 years for increases, because it's the only way to solve inflation. You can cut, but there's a point at which you just can't cut anymore.
Okay, so in this, I know you're not still in the schools as an administrator, but in this environment where we've had private businesses, government units, we've seen it with the city of Cincinnati
Yes.
over the last several weeks, struggling with the question of layoffs and furloughs. How has this played out in the schools in the last 18, 24 months?
Well, the schools have certainly been on attempting to be on a savings program somewhat, so that they are not overspending in any of the various areas. And from there, they're hoping that they'll be able to continue by keeping the money flow the same as it has been over the last few years. And that's counting on this whole renewal process to take place and the $65 million to stay available for them to be budgeting.
What? Go ahead.
Well, Dan, one thing that I think is important, particularly in the contrasting to the city's situation, over the last 8 years or so, the district's enrollment has declined on a pretty steady pace with the start of charter schools and just enrollment decline, birth rate decline. But it's steadied now. Over that time, though, it was declining. The district cut 1,500 positions. I mean, they laid off 1,500.
Over what period of time?
It was about over a 7-8 year time period.
Okay.
As that declined, it was Superintendent Rosa Blackwell who really right-sized, if you want to use that word, which may not be so friendly, but matched the teaching force, the staffing, additional staffing, support staffing force to the number of students. Enrollment's now leveling off, and the district is thinking may even see an increase of enrollment this year. So that's why you see a hiring of more teachers.
Well, the other side of that is, again, it has been noted that, as I understand it, the system hired 55
Yes.
additional teachers this year. What you're doing is you're putting it in the context not of just since last year, but in the
Right.
last 7-8 years, there's been this huge cutting process, and the 55 increased people in the schools, as I understand, not in,
Yes.
in the schools.
Right.
This is spurred by what? Why the need for 55 additional?
I think the economy does have something to play with that, where we are seeing more students returning from private and parochial schools. And so with more students, you obviously need more staff. Doesn't mean you get any more money from the state, but it does mean that you've got to meet those expenses.
What about that? What's the situation? We've all just been through this budget process with the state. What was the impact on the schools with the state budget?
It was a negative impact, about a $6 million loss over the next 2 years. Cincinnati is very unusual because of all the businesses that are in our community that are wonderful, that are supporting our campaign. We're very pleased with that, but we're property rich district, income poor, but the state doesn't take into account that. They only count the property wealth, and so they don't. It ended up being in this formula actually a cut to Cincinnati.
So property rich, meaning that there's a lot of taxable, the tax base
Yes.
is high, particularly
Right.
because of the center city, the downtown Central Business District, which generates a lot of the tax revenue.
About 60% is business.
Even though people in those residential neighborhoods may be experiencing declines of property values and layoffs and all sorts of other things.
That's right.
So it's a real issue. What would you say, and it's the hard question that every one of these levies always has to face. If this doesn't pass, even though I'm sure the system will come back next year and try to get this passed,
Yes,
but
we will.
what are the implications of this not passing?
The principal has a heart attack. Again, you continue to try. The first implication is the pressure on the budget planning for next year. This pays for general operating expenses. This is teachers, staff, classroom supports, books, everything. So those are the kinds of things that you have to start looking at. 14% is pretty significant.
And just to be clear, because you're saying this is operating, and we've said that before, but let's make sure, this is not about renovating or building new buildings.
Has nothing to do with that.
That's a different pot of money.
Absolutely.
Correct.
People, I get asked this question all the time. Why can't they take some of that money that's over for all these new buildings that are being renovated or being built? Why can't you just move some of that money over?
State law.
State law. It literally can't be done.
It cannot be done.
Two different pots of money. So this is operating. Do you know what the percentage of the system's money goes to teacher salaries,
about
personnel?
80% is salary
personnel.
and personnel. Yes. So this is a very teaching children, educating children, supporting those activities, very people oriented.
And my understanding is the teachers union was cooperative in trying to meet this budget.
Oh, yes. Very much so.
They forewent a raise, right?
Took salary freeze.
Took
Yes.
a salary freeze.
All employees took a salary freeze. All the unions agreed to it in December this past year for this year, which I think is,
Wonderful.
amazing.
That they were doing that.
We're just about out of time. Last year you were part of that big primary season. This year a general election. It's going to be very interesting. The dynamics are always different in each election cycle.
Absolutely.
And we'll be following this. So if people, you like to learn more about the Cincinnati Public School levy, you can go to www.justarenewal.com, and there's a lot of information there. So thank you very much for being here. We'll follow this. Stay tuned after the break. 10 people are running for 2 open trustee seats in Union Township in Claremont County against the backdrop of charges of favoritism and corruption. A special investigative report by Local 12 reporter Jeff Hirsh. Welcome back. One of the hottest political spots in the region this fall is Union Township, Claremont County. There's a police and fire levy on the ballot. If it fails, there will likely be layoffs. And 10 people are running for just 2 seats on the Township Board of Trustees, 2 incumbents and 8 challengers. One of the issues in that race is a development deal Local 12 has been investigating all this year. And as Local 12 reporter Jeff Hirsh shows us, new questions just keep popping up.
Here at Ivy Point, there are a couple of shiny new office buildings, a $2 million plus park hardly anyone uses, and plenty of soggy dirt.
Well, the first concern is when you drive down, there's just a lot of mud right now.
But the mud here at Ivy Point is only part of the ethical swamp which surrounds the locality where Ivy Point is located, Union Township, Claremont County. John McGraw is running for Township Trustee.
With regards to Ivy Point, if you have to ask if things are ethical, if you have to go seek to your attorney to find out if you're doing something ethical, you're probably not.
Which brings us back to the mud. The newest member of the Union Township Board of Trustees, one of the people John McGraw is running against, accuses Local 12 of unfairly dragging people through the mud in our investigation of how millions of tax dollars have been spent here at Ivy Point.
The report was pretty well put together in that it had a series of questions and a series of facts that were put together in a format that a couple of the magazines I see at the grocery stores would be well proud of.
Tim Donnellan was appointed to the board in 2008, filling a vacancy. No stranger to Union Township politics, Donnellan was on the board back in the 90s and was part of a key decision.
I do know Ken Geis. I hired him as township administrator when he was a police lieutenant.
As we reported, Geis as administrator and Chuck Kubicki, head of Cincinnati United Contractors, put together the Ivy Point project in late 2005. Geis then quit the township, taking a job with CUC, the Ivy Point developer. But Donnellan says he's found nothing wrong with how Geis handled his job opportunity.
He made a request of the township law director as to what the ethical guidelines were. And in all the documents that I reviewed, I found nothing to suggest that he had violated that in any way.
But it looks like we won't find out the exact wording of that ethics request, nor exactly when it was made, nor exactly how it and the answer were phrased, because Donnellan says the document is covered by attorney-client privilege.
So why won't you release it?
I'm sorry?
Why won't you release the ethics opinion? You're the client, you're one of the trustees. Would you come into the other trustees and go, all you need is one more vote if you're one of them, let's release it?
I believe that releasing township attorney opinions delivered to the township trustees would be a bad business practice. As much as I would like to release that document to you, it's not a good business practice to do that.
Ever.
Ever.
But while Donnellan would not release the opinion, he would say when it was prepared and pay attention to the date.
What date was the ethics opinion given to you guys? What was it dated?
February the 6th of 2006.
That's when you received the letter.
That's when the letter was dated.
But there's an issue here, because the Union Township attorney, the man who apparently indicated it was okay for Ken Geis to talk with CUC or take a job at CUC or whatever specifics are in the ethics opinion that we are not allowed to see, well, get this, the Union Township attorney was working for CUC at the exact same time.
My name is Larry Barbier. I'm here on behalf of the township.
Larry Barbier is the Union Township attorney, makes about $50,000 taxpayer dollars a year giving legal advice to township officials. But court documents show that while Barbier was working for the township, he was also working for the same company that wanted to hire the township's administrator, something Tim Donnellan was not aware of when we spoke with him.
If Mr. Barbier was working for, or about to work for, and I can pin down the chronology, but working for or about to work for, as an attorney, CUC, at the same time he was working here and issuing an opinion vis-a-vis Mr. Geis's possibility of going to work for CUC, that strike you as a little bit improper?
I haven't even researched that question. Would seem to me that there would be a reason to ask for the documents and the dates and whatnot, but I haven't done that, so it would be just speculation on my part if that was the case.
True to his word, Donnellan did look into the question. He called back a few hours after our interview and left a message. Now remember, keep that date, February 6th, in mind.
I did speak with Larry Barbieri, and I have some information regarding the question you asked me about his association with CUC, concurrent with his association with Union Township, that I'd like to discuss with you so that you have the context for your story. Larry did not work for CUC, nor have any expectation or understanding of any work for CUC until after Mr. Geis was employed there, which obviously was well after the February the 6th letter from Larry regarding the legal and ethical issues surrounding Mr. Geis's involvement.
That's an interesting explanation, but there's a problem because, according to court documents, it's just not true. Check this filing in a lawsuit. It's signed by Lawrence Barbier, attorney for Union Township and Cincinnati United Contractors, and it's dated. The date was filed in the clerk's office, January 20th, 2006. Now, I'm not a math major, but I am pretty comfortable saying that January 20th is before February 6th. So there are documents in a lawsuit which show that Larry Barbier was working for CUC at the same time he was asked about Ken Geis apparently going to work at CUC. The lawsuit involved Ivy Point, the project Ken Geis helped put together with CUC. A different developer wanted part of the property. It ended up in court. CUC and Union Township filed to join the case, trying to preserve the Ivy Point development. In fact, Barbier said, quote, CUC will suffer enormous damages if the other developer got part of the land. Remember, Tim Donnellan said that Larry Barbier did nothing for CUC until well after February 6th, and not until Ken Geis had gone to work for the contractor. Ken Geis's last day with the township was March 10, 2006. But on February 14th, Larry Barbier filed another motion in the land dispute lawsuit for the township and the contractor. So, bottom line, it looks like Ken Geis got a legal opinion about going to work for CUC from a lawyer who was also working for CUC. No comment from Larry Barbier on what he did or did not advise, attorney-client privilege, he says. Ken Geis will not do a TV interview unless we run everything he says unedited, something no journalistic organization could accept. So we're back to Tim Donnellan, who now says Larry Barbier simply forgot some dates about when he did what.
You're okay with, I just forgot the dates?
Again, I can understand where he's coming from that perspective, because that wasn't a case where he was representing CUC separately from the township. He was representing Union Township's interest and had CUC as a co-plaintiff in that case.
But other court documents from the same time show Barbier acting for CUC alone, not jointly with the township. But that's not all. Union Township may have violated Ohio's open meetings law. There is nothing in the trustees' minutes which indicated they ever voted on or even discussed joining the Ivy Point lawsuit with CUC. Nothing, no public vote. There's not even a public vote to go into a private meeting to discuss a legal matter. But somebody discussed it somewhere because it was done. Meantime, Ivy Point has become more like Poison Ivy Point for the township. Senco Products in one of the two office buildings here has gone bankrupt, likely meaning fewer employees and fewer tax dollars. And a library branch proposed for Ivy Point? That's been shelved. The financially strapped library system cannot afford it. And that's a problem for Union Township, which is buying 19.5 Ivy Point acres from CUC for $5.8 million. The township still owes $3.1 million on the deal. The library was supposed to provide half of that. Not anymore.
We've been negotiating with Union Township to purchase that property, and we've suspended indefinitely our plans to build a new branch there.
Which adds to the township's financial woes, layoffs, cutbacks, and a tax increase on the November ballot to prevent letting go more than 30 police officers and firefighters. At the same time, Union Township does not have the money it owes CUC.
And that money's non-existent right now.
And it gets worse, because if Union Township does not pay Cincinnati United contractors the money it owes for Ivy Point by October 1st, the township might get sued by CUC over Ivy Point.
If the trustees and CUC are able to come to an understanding as to how to go forward, it'll work out fine. If not, the courts will have to decide.
Normally, if Union Township is sued, the Union Township law director gets involved. But that won't happen here. Larry Barbier still works for both the township and for CUC. In fact, CUC put up Barbier's new office building. The new township administrator, Dave Duckworth, says he's getting outside legal advice on the dispute. Larry Barbier suggested that, Duckworth says, to avoid the perception of conflict of interest. But besides conflict of interest, there's also an interesting conflict in the paperwork signed by Union Township and CUC for Ivy Point. CUC has written to the township saying payment is due by October 1st. That's what the settlement statement says, which both sides signed. But the township says we cannot meet that date. We'll pay you what we can. That's what the contract says, which both sides signed. And who drew up these potentially conflicting documents, or at least reviewed them for the township? We asked Larry Barbier if he did. Barbier respectfully declined to answer. And so it goes in Union Township, where the buildings are nice and shiny, but the relationships surrounding them seem a bit muddy, to say the least. Jeff Hirsh, Local 12.
One of those running in November is Bob McGee, president of the Board of Trustees. We wanted to talk with him about Ivy Point, but McGee did not respond to our phone call, nor did he get back to us after we sent him an email to his office. Local 12 intends to continue pursuing the sort of in-depth investigative reports that Jeff Hirsh has prepared over the last few months on Union Township. To help us, we would like viewers to let us know of situations that you think warrant investigation. If you are aware of what you see as instances of waste or fraud, contact us at local12.com and hit the Send It button. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, the race for the Cincinnati Board of Education. Have a good week.